Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's career workshop on asking questions in an interview. Happy to have you here, and I'd like to say it's good to see you, but we don't see you, so hopefully you see us. If you do and you hear us, please say hi. Please throw something up in the chat so that we know that you're here. We know where you're from. We can say hi to you directly. I would like to, well, first of all, this event is asking questions in an interview. You should be here, or hopefully you are here if you are a mid to senior level professional and you are considering a next move in your career, regardless of whether it's an active or passive consideration. My name is Jason Sanders. I lead Flycast. It's a boutique executive search firm focused on the software and consulting industries. Hi, Christoph. Good to see you. Good to have you. I've helped global companies like Bain, BCG, and Accenture hire executives. More importantly, for this session, I've helped thousands of executive job seekers over the years. I have with me Jonathan Phillips. Jonathan, do you want to say hi? And we're also doing a mic check here. Jonathan has a new mic, so if anybody wants to pipe in and let us know if Jonathan's mic is working well, please do. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, thanks everybody for joining us. These career workshops have been a lot of fun, and we've been learning as much from the people that attend as we're hoping we're providing to you. Ask questions as they come up. Like Jason, I do retained search, professional services and industry around mostly heavy resources, energy transition, things like that. Also do some career counseling, and that's been a lot of fun. And we're adding services. The world is changing, adding some human resource services too to try and better serve our clients. So glad to have you all here and hope you enjoy it.
Great. All right. Thanks, Jonathan. So what is the purpose of asking questions in an interview? It may seem obvious, but let's go through that. I will start, Jonathan. One of the purposes of asking questions is to gather information that will help you make a decision in the court, assuming that you get an offer, and making a decision about going forward. What else?
So very importantly, and you need to think of an interview as being, two directions, right? And we did a previous workshop around service interviewing. Ask a question that helps the person interviewing you know that you know what they're looking for, as well as understanding where their particular value is if you show up to do this job. So ask them questions that evoke advocacy, that make them engaged in talking with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You're looking to make an impression, bring in smart questions. That is a very helpful way to interview. And, if nothing else, you're filling in the gap. Sometimes there's some silence or you need to buy time or whatever. So asking questions is a really good way to do that. So before we get started with advice, we'd like to hear you, or not hear you yet, but we'd like to take a moment and ask you to write down 3 questions that you might ask in a generic interview. So without knowing exactly what the job is about, that's fine. Just write down or type down or something. We'll give you just a few seconds to do that, and then we'll move on. So write down 3 questions that you would ask in an interview and go.
And Jason, let me put in while we're doing this, sometimes I get questions during these presentations through my email or in text messages. I'm not sure everybody that's looking at this can access this particular chat. I think most of them can, but I have gotten a few questions sent to me through other media.
Great. Excellent. We'll hold on to those at the end, until the end, and then we'll go through them. Okay. All right. Hopefully everybody's had enough time to write down 3 questions. And let's talk about what kind of questions to ask and get some examples. And we'll start with gathering information. Do you want to start with that one, Jonathan?
Yeah, I think the most important thing before gathering information is to take a look at what you think success looks like in this role before you show up for the interview. Look at the company website, look at postings, look at Glassdoor, get a sense for what the company's like, and look at their recent hires. Have they hired people like you? And think to yourself, in the news and press releases, what are they trying to accomplish in the next 12 months? And ask questions that are going to be germane to them.
Yeah. Now, let me share one with you that I think we had an insight yesterday. My sister got a call from a recruiter about a director level role. And she was concerned that one of the things that they were looking for in the position description she did not have. And she was nervous about that. She wasn't sure how to address it. And I said, well, the thing that you should do in that situation is ask about it. So this was a managing a team kind of question. And I said, well, look, tell them you've never managed a team before. How important is that for the role? Now, that gives you a few advantages. One is it shows that you read the position description and that you understand it. It shows that you're thoughtful. It also shows that you're not desperate for the role, because if you're not right for the role, I should say you're thoughtful. I don't know. Desperate is maybe not the right word, but you're being thoughtful about it. That you're looking for a fit with the organization and with the position, because if that is really their true need, then she's not a fit, and it's a black and white. It's a binary choice. And so, it puts that on the table. So she's gathering information and making a good impression at the same time. Next one, ask a leader. So in other words, this would be, now we're going to go through 3 different types of interviews. What to ask a hiring authority. So we're going to go through a hiring authority, peer, and HR person as our audiences, right? So you're being interviewed by a hiring authority. Some of the questions that you might ask would be about the business strategy and vision for the company. A lot of times, especially CEOs, love talking about their vision. So this is going to get them engaged with you. And frankly, it's helpful information for you to have. And especially if you have some sense of the market that they're in, because then you can contribute to talking with them about their vision from the point of view of being educated. You might also ask about their market positioning and primary challenges, in part because if their challenges are something that you can help them address, then you'll be positioning yourself better for the role. And obviously, you want to know if those challenges are there, so that you can make a decision about whether they're surmountable or not. Do you want to take another stab at that one, Jonathan, before we move on?
Yeah, I like objective-based interviewing. So I might ask the person, especially if it's the hiring authority, what does success look like at the end of a year? So if I join a year from now, why are you glad you hired me? What have I accomplished in that first year that makes hiring me an unqualified success? And get them to list some metrics and share with them how you might accomplish some of those things and make it an interactive conversation. But it also opens the door to questions you can ask later, maybe not on the first interview, but later on. If you know what is required to succeed, you might ask yourself, what do I need resources wise in order to be able to accomplish that objective? And resources are simple things like just money, time, and people. And when you ask probing questions oriented towards, here's how I envision success, and here are the resources I need to succeed, the hiring authority will feel that you've engaged, that you understand what he's looking for, and it will reduce his sense of risk in hiring you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, a peer. So a peer is now interviewing you. What do you ask them, Jonathan?
I mean, peers are great. You want to be relaxed. You want to sit back, don't fold your arms. You want to really personally engage. This is someone you have to work with. And I would very carefully say to them, look, you've joined, you're now in this job. If I join, what advice do you have for me so that I can get up the learning curve fast? I'd like to be productive as fast as possible. What would you suggest I do in the first 30, 60, 90 days to really become immediately productive?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's so many ways that you could go with this. I think with a peer, you can ask about day to day. What are they working on? What kind of projects are they working on? What are the challenges that they face? What are the challenges that they face with the organization? What do they like best about it? It's a sort of binary, give them an opportunity to complain a little bit about the company. Every company has warts, right? So being able to kind of uncover some of those is helpful, as long as you don't push, right? So you're saying what's good and what's bad. You can't just say what's bad, right? I think that's kind of obvious, but nevertheless, just so that we're all on the same page. And next, what to ask a recruiter or HR professional. One of the things that's important with recruiters and with HR professionals is we don't know, we're missing information a lot of times. We don't know the technical aspects of a role or of an organization. This is particularly true for us, third-party recruiters. We get a peek in, we get an opportunity to interview our client at first, and then our contact with the client will vary during the course of the search. And sometimes it's not all that much. And sometimes we're a step removed from the hiring manager. And so our knowledge is not that great. And one of the things that you want to avoid doing is putting us out of our depth while still gathering information. So that's just something to be aware of when you're speaking with your audience and asking questions, is to gear your questions towards the audience. And I think that that's particularly a sensitive thing in talking with HR and recruiting professionals. We have a lot to offer in the process, and our advice and counsel will be sought many times, but the counsel that they ask are not about the technical issues. Typically, they're more about impressions and things like that. So, so some questions you might ask about is, what is the company culture like? What sort of resources do you have? What sort of challenges do you think people here face? Sort of more general questions that will engage the person that you're interviewing with. What do you think, Jonathan?
So again, I like objective, positive questions that sort of envision success going forward. I would say, of the most successful people you've hired over the last 3 years, what have they done to get integrated? How have they been so successful? And what advice would you have for me so that I can quickly do well here? Who else has done well? And get them to share with you how those people have done well and why, and simply mirror what's worked for them. Joining the right groups, getting involved in the right groups inside the company, maybe joining a charity group that a lot of the company employees partake in. But what HR can do is paint for you a picture on how, besides the job, can you be successful in the company. Culture.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's very important. Okay, we're tearing through this one. I think we're going to finish early this time, Jonathan.
We got some good questions.
We'll see. We'll see. So this next part, we'd like to hear from you. Hopefully you learned something and are ready to share your best question. Best question might be one of the 3 that you wrote down at the beginning. Or maybe you've gotten another idea in the course of the last 7 or 8 minutes for a new question. And we will take those questions. Now, if you have something like that you can share that you might ask in an interview, that's the assignment here. However, if you have another question for us, that's fine too. And we'll take that as well. We'll kind of take those in order and see where we go from here. So here is a question from Lori. I'm guessing this is, why is this position vacant? What do you think about that question, John?
I love that question. And most importantly, I love answering that question before you walk into the interview. So it's important to try and surround a position with information from people that you know, that you trust. You don't want it to get back to the company. Glassdoor can often tell you. There's lots of stuff usually in social media that might reveal what's going on with the company. But that's a question to try and get an answer for before you walk in the door.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Inside the interviewing process, it's a dangerous question to ask the hiring authority. There could be negative politics. It is a question you could ask HR. But again, the reason it's vacant is something you should have some insight to before you walk in the door.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's another question that's come up. This is from Joe. Thanks, Joe. And it's very similar. So what created this opportunity? Why this role? Why now? Right. So to get at if it's a replacement or a turnover. And yeah, I think that Jonathan is right. There's a political sensitivity about this. So how you ask this question is very important. And a lot of times there's growth that's creating an opportunity. So you could ask something along the lines of, what's created this opportunity, as opposed to what happened to the last guy, right? So what's creating this opportunity? Why do you need to fill this position? Those are just ways of asking those in sort of a politically correct manner. But the question itself at its core is a very good one. Okay. We've got one here, which is actually coming from the other direction, Jonathan. What do you do with this one? Why should we hire you for this position?
Yeah, I actually love that question, because that question, why should they hire you? That is the only question that when I counsel senior executives and they're about to go on an interview, even with someone they know, I say, look, before you talk to them, tell me, why do you think this person should be an advocate for hiring you, and why should the company hire you? Remember, there are two audiences when you interview: the person that's going to hire you and the company that you're being hired into. You should attempt to answer that question before you walk in the door and have three granular reasons and examples for why they should hire you based on things you've done before that will be immediately accretive if you show up.
Yeah.
Asking that question during the interview process is sort of impossible. What you can do is say, tell me about your most recent successful hires and show how you're similar. Or you can say, tell me what the success metrics are for this role in, say, 12 months, and then show how you've succeeded similarly in other places. But should is a terribly important question. What you want to do is make it clear to the other person that they should hire you by not asking directly, but by making yourself interesting, attractive, and clearly you've thought this out and you know why they should hire you. Your attitude that way, it will come through incredibly well during an interview process.
Yeah.
I love the question.
And Vishal, I'd like to add something to what Jonathan said. I think that is very good advice. Stylistically, this is also really important, and this will help you immeasurably in answering that question. And that is, that is pause. No, I forgot what the question was. No, and that is, well, it's something along the lines of, I'm not sure, right? I mean, you want to give the impression. I'll give you the feeling for it. I had the actual question in my mind, but the idea is basically, I'm not sure that you should, and I'm really here to figure out whether there's a fit between what it is that you're looking for and what I have to offer. And by doing that, you create you balance the power out a little bit better, and you put yourself less on a back foot and justifying yourself as a candidate, and more as a consultative, looking for a solution, helping that company look for a solution that you may be the right answer to, but that you also could accept that you might not be. And by playing a little bit hard to get in that way, you are creating more interest in yourself. And you don't want to be too hard to get, but at the same time saying, look, I'm really looking for a match for me and for a company. And so these are the reasons why I might be interested, why you might be interested in me, but ultimately I'm looking to make sure that there's a fit here. So it's a really good question, and how you handle it stylistically is also important as the content that you have. Have another question from Joe. And Joe, you had a whack at this, so we'll come back to that. LinkedIn user, I think, is Lori. Same thing. We'll come back to you, but I want to take this last question from Christoph before we do that. Similar to Jonathan's idea, how do we drive strategy objectives? ? And what does this role uniquely contribute to this? I think you're called out on that one, Jonathan. What do you think?
Oh yeah. So this is similar to the should question, but Christoph, this is a question you should ask yourself and answer again before you walk in and have an answer. But this is a senior level question where you're talking at the board level, the C level, or N-1. Because the only people who think strategically about any job in a company are people with a huge equity interest in the company's better performance. So we have to be careful to divide where you are in your career sort of tenure. From 20 plus years, this question is extremely important. And it is a question you should ask, preferably once you're a fit for the job, at the next meeting over a dinner or a lunch with the most senior people. Then you begin to say, what are the resources, money, time, and people? And those are strategic questions aimed at achieving the objective. It is the perfect secondary question to bring to the interview once you have shown that you're fit for the job. And remember, we separate jobs and careers a little bit, which we've talked about before, but that is a very insightful and correct question, and important. Better asked in the second round of interview with most senior executives in the company.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's go back to Joe's question here. Can you describe the company culture, leadership culture, looking to identify cultural fit? Yeah, absolutely. And Joe, this is a good question for HR.
Yep.
It's especially good if you're looking to fill in gaps. It's something that HR people love to talk about. They try to keep their finger on the pulse. A lot of times, HR people are interested in things like employee retention, which goes straight to culture. And that's a way that you could ask about it. What enables you to keep people here when you have turnover, which every organization does. You could recognize it. What causes the turnover? What do you areas are there to improve on? Or what do you think you do great with? Those kind of questions will help you get to cultural questions. If you ask it directly, you'll get some information, you will get an answer, but you will get better answers if you follow up with other questions, or if you take it from a different perspective, like when you have turnover, why? When people stay, why? Those kinds of things. Let's see. And we've got another question here. I think this is from Lori. How might you deal with a situation where you are overqualified, but would still be interested in the position? That's a fantastic question, Jonathan. Go.
Again, so there are two levels of being overqualified. Early in your career, you've had more experience than this role requires. That's a question for you to ask yourself before you walk in at this lower level between 0 and 15 years. Is this the right company for me to join? And are there things I can do in the company that are going to add to my resume asset value? If you are a senior person and you have too much experience, like you're over 50, and I have a whole separate networking group of people that are over 50, that is a very different question. And here I would simply state the obvious. You are who you are, be proud of it, go for it. If you're overqualified, you're overqualified. Shift from applying for the job to solving the problem the job wants to accomplish, offer up a referral to someone else, but then look at them and say, look, but I love the company. I've done my research. I'd like to join. This may not be the right role, but I'm interested in helping your company grow and achieve this objective. Maybe there's something else I can do to be helpful here.
Yeah.
You have to really kind of go with who you are, and you can't hide your qualifications. It's better to be open and inclusive and honest and forthright, because getting a job and keeping it are two completely different worlds. And you can convince a lot of companies to hire you. And what you've done is you've created a false positive, because you're going to show up the person they hired and the person you are being disconnected. And that's going to lead to a huge integration problem. The answer is you're never overqualified for the job you should take. It's that simple.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to consider why somebody might say that to you. Right? So overqualified can be translated as you make too much money,
Yep.
and that may not be your concern. It can be a statement of you're too old. We have a different culture, right? But hopefully they knew approximately how old you were based on a resume or some information that they got before, which means that they're willing to talk to you regardless. And so if you're there in front of the person and talking with them, even though that may be a concern, it may not be the overriding concern. And also, if you're in that situation, a lot of times your values or certainly your needs have shifted. And if you're being interviewed by a younger person, they may not get that fully. They may understand it, but they may also think, well, they're over the hill, or they don't have fire in the belly, or whatever. But the reality is that if you have more experience, a lot of times you can solve problems a lot more quickly. You see through things more quickly. You don't get as ruffled under stress. You can kind of see where solving the problem fits into the larger picture, either of the organization or of solving other problems within the organization. And so that perspective and being able to mentor people into another role are also things that really can stand you in good stead. And so being able to bring that to bear really needs to be put against the backdrop of them feeling like they might not be able to afford you, or they might lose you quickly, or that you might not be interested in doing something that is somehow, beneath what you've done before. And so putting them at ease in those places, even up front, even before they ask you the question, may be important. You can address that up front because if you know that in your mind, you can address that. And of course, if there are other potential opportunities there, you can throw out, as Jonathan said, ideas about being able to being interested in those kinds as well. So Thank you very much, everybody, for all of the questions. If you want to get in touch with us, here's our information. Next week, we are going to talk about a very important question. It actually is very much related to this. And this is when somebody says to you, what are your compensation expectations? What are you going to say? And I ask every candidate that question. Every candidate gets asked that at some point, and it is a big stumbling block for a lot of people. And so we're going to talk about that. And I'll tell you up front, the answer isn't ask them what the job pays. That is not the answer. And the answer is probably not, this is what I'm making now. So we will let you know about that and give you some ideas next week. And then the week after that is going to be a special guest, David Fields, who is a consultant to independent consultants and small consulting firms. And he is a great guy. I've known him for years. He is terrific at what he does. And I'm very excited that we've been able to get him to join us. So that's going to be in a couple of weeks. And it's a perfect session for both independent consultants and also people who are thinking about that, have just entered the field, or who someone want to take their knowledge and turn it into an independent consulting practice. Thank you very much all for joining us again today, and we will look forward to seeing you next week.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.